Ms. Arias, before we pick up again and speak about your relationship with Mr. Burns, I'd like you to take a look at Exhibits 440 and 441, and actually let me say 440 for the time being, and let me see if you recognize these.
Yes, I recognize them.
And what is exhibit number 440?
These are text messages sent between Travis and I, dated, well, it says it's dated from 2106 to 6608.
And do you recognize those as being those text messages?
Yes, these are all the text messages. Well, not all of them, some were deleted, but the ones that were recovered, these are the text messages between us.
And as best you can recall, are the times correct?
Actually, no, the time is 7 hours off. It's 7 hours ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Arias. Now, we ended this morning with talking about Brian Burns, and I believe you were just telling us how Ms. Hughes' brother Zion told you he found your future husband, that sort of thing. And I think we're at the point in time where Ryan was going to call you, or you received a call from him, right?
Yes, I received a call from him one time when I was walking out in Wairika.
Okay. And had you recalled meeting Mr. Burns before?
I think he recalled more than I recall. The only thing I remember about him is I saw him in Oklahoma City in 2008. He didn't seem very approachable, not because of his manner, but because... Yes.
Could you describe your impressions of him when you met him?
Yes. He was surrounded by a lot of people, so I don't know if I made my way up to him and introduced myself, or if he made his way over to my side of the room and then we just introduced ourselves to each other. I can't remember that. I just remember it was at a gathering with some people that were on Team Renew, and then also on Saturday night of the convention, a bunch of us piled into a limousine and drove.
She was asked about her impressions.
Sorry.
What happened, Jodi?
The only other thing I remember about Ryan in Oklahoma City is that we all piled into a limousine together. I wouldn't even have remembered he was there, except when I reviewed my pictures later, he was in one of the pictures inside the limo.
Okay. So it sounds like that Mr. Lovinger was attempting to play matchmaker between you and Ryan Burns. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And were you open to dating? How did you feel about it? Would you feel like you were betraying Travis if you dated Ryan? Can you just kind of explain your mindset to us?
Yes. I wouldn't have felt like I was betraying Travis, but I was worried about how Travis would react, so I asked Zion in one of my text messages, said, not that you would, but please don't tell Travis about this. He's a good friend, but in order for this to have any chance, he shouldn't know about it. And Zion texted me back and said, he shall not know.
And why were you concerned, or what gave you concern if Mr. Alexander were to know about you perhaps dating or or speaking with Mr. Burns?
Well, it had been a pattern of Travis's since before we dated that he didn't take kindly to me going on dates with other guys. And throughout, well, I didn't go on dates with other guys while we were together, but even after we broke up, I went on another date with John Dixon, and that didn't go well at all when Travis found out. And then there was another guy that I went on a date with, and he teased me about him for forever after, almost. And also when we had that big fight in his bedroom the week that I was moving, that's when I told him about this guy, Steve Carroll, that I was text messaging or chatting with, and that erupted. So I just didn't want to hear it from him. I knew he was 1,000 miles away and he couldn't hurt me, but it still hurt my feelings when he screamed and yelled, and it was a headache and it was drama, and I just wanted things to be peaceful between us.
Even though you were 1,000 miles away, let me ask you this. Were there occasions during this period of time where Travis yelled at you on the phone?
Yes.
Did you do the shaking that you spoke about?
I probably did.
Okay. Now, from your understanding, when you were having these phone conversations with Mr. Burns, where did he live?
My understanding was that he was in West Jordan, Utah.
Okay. So you're not, you're thousands of miles away. Is this a relationship that thrives over the telephone, text message? Describe that for us.
We began talking. There weren't any major fireworks. He was nice. We just talked back and forth for a little while. Nothing ultra flirty, and then it sort of tapered off for some days, maybe a week or so. I think it was like almost a week. And then he texted me again out of the blue, and I explained to him, well, I texted you a few times, he didn't answer. So I kind of thought maybe he lost interest. And then he explained that he was camping and he didn't have cell phone reception. And as a joke, he was saying things like, love her, how could that ever happen? And all these nice text messages. And I thought, okay, well, he does like me. He just was out of cell phone range. So we sort of picked up again and began talking some more.
Began talking. Now, I know you were hundreds of miles away and you're not seeing each other. But in terms of the relationship, was this a romantic relationship, a prospective romantic relationship?
I would say a prospective romantic relationship.
I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 280. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That's a text message that Ryan sent to me when we were text messaging back and forth.
Is there a background to that text message that was related to a conversation?
Yes, eventually we talked about meeting, and it would make more sense for me to go out there because there's more to do in Utah by far than there is Wairika. Plus there are national parks and other things surrounding the area he lived. So I was gonna go out there and hang out so that we could get to know each other.
Okay. Now, Judge, if I may approach you.
Okay.
Ms. Arias, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 392. Can you look at that and tell us if you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
It's a text message Travis sent to me immediately after another one he sent to me.
I move to admit Exhibit 392.
I don't have any objection.
392 is admitted.
Can you see the date on there, Ms. Arias?
Yes.
And I see 0502. What does that denote?
May 2nd. That would have been 2008.
2008. And how can you be sure it was 2008?
I didn't get my Helio phone until April 2008, and that's on my Helio.
And the text message says, send me some pictures, I want to see you right now. What does that mean?
He had just sent me a much longer text message talking about, alluding to the Little Red Riding Hood thing that he wanted to do, and the pictures that he wanted to take, the same thing we were talking about on the tape that you heard yesterday. And he wanted me to take phone pictures of myself and send them to him right then.
Phone pictures of yourself, like pictures of your face?
Well, explicit photographs.
What do you mean explicit?
Maybe nude, like sexually explicit.
Was he specific in his request?
That was the only, I think that was the only request that I remember on that day.
Just a sexually explicit picture, correct?
Well, he said pictures plural.
Okay. And you said this was also related to a discussion of I believe you said Little Red Riding Hood fantasy. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that the fantasy we heard described yesterday on the tape?
Yes, that's what it was alluding to.
So on this tape recorded call that we listened to yesterday, had he alluded to that fantasy previously, or was that the first time he brought it up with you?
No, I first learned about it in early in our friendship in 2006.
He brought it up in 2006?
Yes.
I want to show you, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
What's been marked as Exhibit 391. Do me a favor and take a look at this exhibit and see if you recognize it.
Yes.
And what is it?
It's the longer text message on that same day right before the one you just showed me.
That was the one you were referring to moments ago?
Yes.
I move to admit Exhibit 391.
No objection.
391 is admitted.
And so we're clear, Ms. Arias, before we begin to discuss this. In your recognition of this, was this, we have different pictures of it, but was this part of one long text message?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And 5-2 that we see there, we're talking also May 2nd
Yes, same day.
and 2008?
Yes.
Okay. He says that this photo shoot is going to be one of the best experiences of your life and his. And he talks about all the pictures he's going to take of you. Was this doesn't mention Little Red Riding Hood, so I just want to be clear. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, that was the only photo shoot kind of thing that was planned at that time that was of the nature that he's referring to in this.
Okay. And he says the progressiveness of it from the very clean to the very dirty and everything in between. What did that mean to you?
The same thing that he explained further in the tape was that he wanted to get different angles, different shots, different positions.
He says, a day that has not gone by that I haven't dreamt about driving my shaft and hard into you. Is that a reference to your understanding, is that a reference to what we talked about or what we heard on the tape when he talked about zip tying you to a tree?
I hadn't heard about that because this is the 2nd of May and the conversation was on the 10th, so I didn't hear about the zip tying to the tree until that conversation occurred.
Okay.
But presumably in the forest.
Objection. Speculation, presumably.
Sustained.
He references in this email, I have no desire to think of anyone else in my scandalous fantasies. Is this a reference to Little Red Riding Hood, or is there a reference to other fantasies, to your understanding?
My understanding is that he's saying he doesn't want to fantasize about anyone else except me, but he said that to a lot of girls, so.
Okay.
Objection, speculation, move to strike. She doesn't know that.
Sustained. Granted. Last answer.
You found out that when he was dating you, he was dating Lisa Anders and Mimi Hall, right?
I wouldn't say we were dating, but I guess we acted like that.
Okay, you're right. I should say when you were having sex with him, he was dating those 2 other girls, right?
Yes.
Okay. He talks in here and in the tape about fantasizing about you and getting himself off on many occasions. To your understanding, is that a reference to him being by himself or a reference to these phone calls, this phone sex you were having with him?
I assumed it was a reference to by himself.
He also says in this message, you are the ultimate slut in bed. What did that mean to you? Is there some history behind that?
Yes.
What's that history?
Sometimes he would call me that when we were having sex.
Is that one of those things that made you feel special, or how did you feel when he would refer to you as a slut in bed?
Well, he wasn't saying it as an insult, so I just felt, I don't really remember how I felt, but I just knew that he was enjoying himself.
He says he wants to send one down your throat and another on your face. What did that mean to you?
Oral sex and
Ejaculating in you?
yeah, yes.
He also says you're going to get taken like you have never been taken before. What did that mean to you?
We were always trying to top ourselves, like go a little bit farther than the last time, and usually he would come up with some creative ideas, so most of the time I was game for it.
Most of the time you were what?
Game.
Okay. But how about feeling like you've been raped, but you enjoyed every delightful moment of it? Did you want to feel like you were raped?
No. But
So you're accurate here. He also says, you'll rejoice in being a whore. That sole purpose in life is to be mine, to have animal sex with, and to please me in any way I desire. Was it your ultimate goal in life to be Mr. Alexander's whore?
No.
Based on what you said before, you were interested in the fond and affectionate feelings you got from him being happy, right?
Certainly.
Not being his whore.
Well, I mean, that wasn't like how I would have put it, but if that's...
That's how he put it, right?
Well, I mean, sometimes I wouldn't enjoy like being with him, so...
Were you willing at this point in time in your life, in May 2nd, 2008, to have animalistic sex with him?
Probably.
And please him in any way he desired?
Well, there would have been some limits, but mostly yes.
And this was after the abuse and after you'd moved away, you were still willing to do this for Travis, if that's what he wanted, right?
Yes.
You were still willing to be tied to a tree, if that's what he wanted. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure I would have gone for that, but I let him entertain the idea.
He also asks or talks about him doing anything that you want him to do in this part of the text message. Can you see that?
Yes.
Were you going to ask him to tie you to a tree?
No, not that.
Were you going to ask him to ejaculate down your throat and on your face?
I don't know that I would have asked, but I probably would have gone for something like that.
You didn't really have interest in Mr. Alexander as a quote-unquote sex slave, did you?
No, I didn't look at him like that.
Did you want him to be designed for your most vile and lustful pleasures?
No, I don't think any of my pleasures were vile, but maybe lustful, and I didn't expect him to be designed for that.
Why, and this was happening within a day or so of you having conversations or text messages with Mr. Burns, and it sounds like there was a budding, I think we use the words budding romantic interest with Mr. Burns. Why, given this budding romantic interest, are you still entertaining Mr. Alexander's interest?
I still had feelings for Travis, and it was just something that we were familiar with, comfortable with, and I think the comfort came from the familiarity, and it's just something we continued to do.
Okay. Before we move from this time period of your life, I want to show you what's been marked. Exhibit 413, 414, and 415, and entered. I'm going to push this.
You may.
Do you remember seeing those photos previously?
Yes.
Could you explain this photo to us when it was taken? I'm sorry. This is Exhibit 415.
I believe that was taken on Main Street or Broadway. I think it was, Oregon Street. It was taken on Oregon Street in Wairika,
Okay.
right out front of her dad's office.
And her, who is that?
My friend Heather.
Okay. And when was that taken?
It would have been after I moved to Wairika. I don't remember the exact date. Sometime in the spring, I think.
And your hair there, I'll let you describe the color. What color would you describe that as?
I would just say various shades of brown, medium to dark,
Okay.
light to dark, maybe.
Let me show you what's been marked as Exhibit 413. Who's that with you in the photograph?
It's my little sister.
Do you remember when this was taken?
We were laying on my bed and just goofing off, and we're on my pillow and just took pictures.
Do you remember when?
After I moved to Wairika, and it's at my grandparents' house.
Okay. Was this around the time of your phone call with Mr. Alexander?
It would have been somewhat contemporaneous.
You said a few disparaging things about your sister during that phone call. What did you mean by that? You said she was stupid. Can you explain?
Yeah. I wasn't aware at the time that she had a drug addiction, and she was an alcoholic, and she was only 17, and she was also coming out of an abusive relationship that she was hiding from the whole family. So I didn't know any of those three problems. So I thought her behavior was a little off. She was kind of out of it most of that time. So I thought that's just how she was, because I wasn't aware that she had those problems.
Okay. And it appears to me in this photograph, I would describe the hair color as various shades of brown. Is that what you would say?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you what's Exhibit 414. Do you remember when this was taken?
Yes.
When was this taken?
In the spring, also 2008.
Who's that with you in the photograph?
That's my parents' dog. Her name is Jewel.
And it appears your hair is brown in these photographs.
Yeah, it goes kind of from maybe dark blonde or light brown to dark brown.
When did you dye your hair brown?
I don't remember the exact day, but it's in the text messages.
Okay.
It was while I was still in Mesa.
Moving back to, or forward for a minute to June 4th, earlier we saw photographs of you with brown hair. Or, excuse me, on June 4th we saw pictures of you in brown hair earlier in this trial. Did you change your hair color from this photograph until the time you got to Travis's house?
Trying to remember because I dyed my hair twice, and the first time it didn't take, that was in Mesa, so I did it again. But it was already dyed by then because it was not that dark until the second time. So.
Okay. You didn't go blonde?
I wouldn't have been able to go back to blonde.
Why not?
Well, I had been platinum blonde for about almost 5 years at that point. So as you can see, my natural hair color is pretty dark. And when you strip away all that hair color, the shaft of the hair it changes it. I don't exactly know because I'm not a cosmetologist, but it changes the hair shaft. So when you deposit dye onto the hair again, it not only takes, but it sucks it up like even more. So it's now almost like it's stained in a way that you can't really remove it. I heard that you could actually strip it back to blonde, but by doing that to my hair of what it was, I wouldn't have really had hair left. It would have just broken off and fallen out. So it stayed dark.
So you have a moment, Your Honor. Arias, I inadvertently gave you the wrong exhibit earlier. I'm going to now hand you, if I may approach, Your Honor, with exhibits 407 and 423. I'm going to ask you if you recognize these exhibits.
Yes, I would recognize them.
Okay. You mentioned just a moment ago that you dyed your hair brown in Mesa and that there was reference to that in one of the text messages. Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at these exhibits and determine if such a text was in there?
I'll look for it. It's not really in order. I found it. Yeah.
Okay, and having refreshed your recollection with that document, When did you dye your hair brown?
Well, it says
Objection hearsay. She has to refresh her recollection. She can just give us the date.
If you could advise us what day, based on looking at that, you dyed your hair back to brown.
Yes, I would say it was on 3/20/08, but it says 3/21.
Objection hearsay.
We approach.
Okay.
Based on your review of the document, not telling us what the document said, but based on your review of the document, what day did you dye your hair from blonde to brunette?
It would have been in the evening on the 20th of March.
Okay. And since that time, you've never gone back to blonde. Is that correct?
Nope, I haven't. Well, this first time it didn't take very well, so I did
Okay.
it one more time. It was like I don't know how else to describe it, like a kind of like a dirty brown. It was sort of medium brown. It's not what I was going for. I wanted it darker.
All right. Now, we've spoken earlier about, and some references have been made to your communication with Mr. Alexander. It wasn't just in person, it wasn't just by phone, verbally. You also communicated through text messages and other forms of internet chat. Is that correct?
Yes.
In these, so we have a better sense of your relationship, everything that led up to June 2008. Was he assertive and aggressive with you in these emails, in these text messages?
Very much authoritative.
Very much what?
Assertive, aggressive, and authoritative.
Okay. Do you recall some of the things he said to you in these text messages? And if you need a moment to refresh your recollection, you certainly can.
You're not talking about the instant messages? You're talking
No,
about...
right now let's talk about the text messages.
Okay.
Without reading what he said, do you recall some of the things he would call you?
Judge, if she could just give us the date, doesn't have to be the time, but the date and whatever she's going to say that she's refreshed about.
The objection to that?
Judge, her recollection of what she doesn't have to give a date and time just to testify, that's not an appropriate objection.
Objection, lack of foundation.
The witness should give the date.
Prior to indicating the statement.
Okay, I'll find it. The one that I remembered was
Judge,
on
I think you instructed her to give us the date.
5/26/08. Well,
What did he say to you on 5/26/08?
he called me, well, he said I look like a pure whore.
And that was on 5/26/08?
Yes.
And do you understand why he called you that? Was he upset? Something of that nature?
Yes. Well, he was upset about a lot of things that day, but there was a specific reason he called me that.
Why he called you a whore?
Yeah.
Why?
He found a comment that I left on another friend's page on his Facebook, on one of his photos.
And this, you said another friend's page. What are you referring to?
His Facebook page. The guy had a photograph up, and I left what I thought was a funny comment on it.
Do you recall what the comment was?
Yes, it was a reference to the movie Anchorman. It's a comedy with Will Ferrell. And can I explain the context?
Well, let's say, first of all, what was the comment?
I put, are those man boobs or are you just ripped?
Okay. And this was the comment. Travis was mad at this comment and called you a whore because you said you made a movie reference.
Yeah, it was a joke about the movie, from the movie.
Okay. Was there other discussions with him that day? Be they, specifically May 26th, be they verbal or written discussions?
There were these text messages and also a chat conversation and a phone conversation that followed.
Okay. Is this a chat conversation we heard in evidence earlier where he calls you a three-hole wonder
Yes,
and a slut
yes,
and a whore?
yes, and many other things.
What other things do you recall him calling you during that conversation?
Calls me a bitch. He tells me I'm worthless, and he tells me I'm shit.
And to your understanding, this was about an Anchorman reference posted on a Facebook page.
That was one of many convoluted subjects that he was angry about.
Okay. Was there other things he was angry at you about
Yes.
that day? To your understanding, what were those things?
He was angry because I told him I would drop the subject of him getting help for his stuff and
What do you mean his stuff?
his sexual problems. And, well, we agreed to drop it as long as he got help. I didn't really want to bring it up anymore, but after he made that comment about sodomizing a little girl on the phone, then I was I was concerned that he wasn't making any progress. So I sent him another of the same little stack of pamphlets that I grabbed, and I mailed it to him without telling him. I just dropped it in the mail because after that phone call, it concerned me. And he blew up over that and some other things also.
Some other things. What other things?
I had missent a text message to his phone. It was supposed to go to Steve Carroll. And the nature of that text message was that, because Travis had my Gmail password and he was getting into it. And so Steve and I were chatting on this, and it created a fight when Travis found the conversations. So I sent Steve Carroll a text message. I meant to send him a text message saying, hey, let's use my Hotmail for now, or something like that. because someone has my Gmail password. Unfortunately, it happens to be an ex-boyfriend. And it was kind of a long explanation, and I went to hit send and could see it was 2 messages on my phone, and it goes through 1 and then 2. And as I was sending it, it saw it was going to Travis Alexander, and I was like, oh crap. So I hit cancel as fast as I could, and it canceled the message, but the first one made it to him, and that was enough to piss him off. So he accused me of being a liar because I wasn't telling him about what was really going on with Steve and I, even though we've never met. And then there was, and so it just seemed to compound because there was Abe, and then there was Steve and John Dixon and all these people. And then he was very angry about all that stuff.
You mentioned Abe. That's a reference to whom?
Abe Abdelhadi?
Since you brought up Abe, if I could approach again, Your Honor, with Exhibit 438. You take a look at that and see if you recognize that.
Yes.
What is that, Ms. Arias?
This is an email I composed to Abe on February 18th, 2007. I composed it at Travis's behest and then sent Abe the email and also forwarded Travis a copy afterward because he wanted to read it.
Okay. Move to exhibit number 438.
Judge, may I voir dire the witness on this one?
You may.
That's it.
You may.
If there's an objection.
You may.
With regard to this, it says subject forwarding our friendship, correct?
That's correct.
And it does say that it's from you, right?
Yes.
And it does give a date, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it does say that it's to Travis Alexander, doesn't it?
The forwarded email is.
No, it doesn't say that. It says to, doesn't it?
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond voir diring the witness. This is cross-examination. He can wait his turn.
Overruled.
Take a look at Exhibit 438 and see who the to line is to.
To travis.alexander@gmail.com.
So this isn't, and there's underneath there a BCC. Do you know what that stands for?
Blind carbon copy.
You just told us, ma'am, that this was composed at Mr. Alexander's behest, right?
Yes.
And that you sent it to Mr. Abdelhadi, right?
Yes.
And that you sent a copy to Mr. Alexander, right?
Afterward, yes.
You didn't do it at the same time? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Ma'am, isn't it true that what happened is that you actually took this email?
Again, Your Honor, I'm going to object. If he wants to say this for cross-examination, fine. But the foundation for this exhibit has been laid, and we move for its admission. She's already explained.
Counsel
it before,
approach.
but,
Counsel approach.
Ms. Arias, before you forwarded this email to Mr. Alexander, do you recall when you sent it to Mr. Abdelhadi?
Objection states the testimony isn't forwarded, it's sent to Mr. Alexander.
Rephrase.
This email was a forwarded email, correct?
Yes.
To whom was it originally sent before you forwarded it to Mr. Alexander?
I first composed it and sent it off to Abe Abdelhadi.
And do you remember when that was?
I believe the date was February 18th, 2007.
So the same day that you forwarded to Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Okay. I move to admit Exhibit 438.
Anything else?
No.
Why did you write this letter to Mr. Abdelhadi?
Travis was giving me a hard time about us remaining friends. He felt that there was too much history between us because we had gone on one date.
And this reads a bit like a breakup letter. You make the comment that what matters to me is that I am accountable for, what matters to me is how that which I am accountable for would make Travis feel.
I don't see what paragraph.
I'm looking at the paragraph here, beginning with the word what.
Okay.
What do you mean by that?
I just wanted to Travis and I had already become official. I guess I just call it official because that's when we decided we were going to stop dating other people. So I wasn't dating Abe during this time, but I was still his friend, and it's very common at the prepaid legal events to hug associates that you know, kind of like we're all a big family. So Travis was not comfortable with me hugging Abe. He had said that his friend Chris called him and told him that he saw me hugging Abe at one of the Super Saturdays in Anaheim. And it made Travis uncomfortable. And then I thought to myself, would I have done that? Would I have hugged Abe if Travis were with me? And I realized that I wouldn't have. So then I realized, well, that means I'm acting differently in front of Travis than I would otherwise. And I didn't like that I didn't want to be that way. So I decided that I wanted to conduct myself and treat Abe the way I would treat him if Travis were standing right next to me.
Okay, I'm a little confused. When we go to the paragraph beforehand, you said, when we hugged at the Grove a few weeks ago, my intention was nothing more than to warmly greet a friend and business associate. Right?
Yes.
That's what it says? What would be wrong with that? In your mind, how about let's start with
There was nothing wrong with it in my mind. I didn't think I was in the wrong, but I realized it made Travis uncomfortable or unhappy.
So because it made Travis uncomfortable and unhappy that you hugged a friend and business associate, you were encouraged by Mr. Alexander in order to avoid his wrath to write this letter, right?
That's me.
Restate.
In order to avoid Mr. Alexander getting mad, raising his voice at you and making you shake, is that why you wrote this letter?
No, because I wasn't shaking yet at that point, and I'd only seen his wrath one time. Actually, I hadn't seen it. I heard it over the phone.
Okay.
I just wrote it more so that he would feel better about my interaction with Abe, and so that Abe was on the same page as me, so that he didn't take any offense when I was less warm or friendly toward him.
Why? You just told us a minute ago that you didn't think there was anything wrong with hugging a friend and business associate at the Grove. Travis did. Why was his feelings on the issue more important to you than yours?
I felt maybe it was just not a good way to look at things at that time, but I used to believe that when you're in a relationship, the other person's feelings should take precedence.
Is that what you mean when you say his happiness is of cardinal significance to me and his feelings, opinion I value more greatly than gold?
Yes.
The next paragraph begins with, I didn't write this email to expound upon my secret worship Travis agenda. What does that mean?
Because it sounds throughout the email like I'm putting him on a pedestal, and I really was, but that wasn't really the reason for the email, so that's not, it was kind of just a joke, but that's why I wrote that.
And you also write in this email, I think you're a great person who has never had a single bad intention towards me, and I appreciate all the time you've taken to impart your knowledge, perspectives, and experiences. You didn't hold any ill will to Mr. Abduhadi, right?
No.
You didn't want to kick his ass in the bathroom, like we heard Mr. Alexander did yesterday?
No, I didn't.
As it relates to your understanding, I know we talked, is this part of the conflict between Mr. Alexander and Mr. Abduhadi?
Yeah, that's one component of the whole conflict regarding that subject.
Did you ever ask Travis to write a similar letter to the woman who was hugging him in Oklahoma City?
No, I would never have done that.
Why not?
I didn't like the way it felt when he asked me to end my friendships. So I wouldn't have done that for him. And I've never done that with any of my boyfriends.
Did he ask you to end other friendships with male friends?
Yes.
Could you describe that for us?
Yes, he didn't want me to be friends with John Dixon.
And so we're clear Mr. Dixon was the gentleman brought up in the tape we heard yesterday?
No, not in the tape. He was the one that we fought about prior to our leaving for Havasupai.
Okay. And he was just a friend, right?
Just a friend. Well, there was sort of a romantic interest there, but it wasn't anything that I would let blossom because he wasn't a member of the church.
Were you encouraged or motivated by Mr. Alexander to write a letter like this to Mr. Dixon?
Yes, I don't think it was quite as long, but there was a similar letter written.
Okay. Was it humiliating to you to write these letters?
It was awkward. I just tried to write from my heart.
And aside from Mr. Abduhadi and Mr. Dixon, were there other males to which Mr. Alexander wanted you to end your friendship?
I can't recall. He was just hostile about most interactions I had with guys, but those two stand out because he actually wanted me to stop being friends with them.
Okay. And you did? In Oklahoma City, well, almost. In Oklahoma City, he demanded that I call Abe right then and there that same night that he saw him and I talking and end our friendship. So I called, I was trying to think of some alternative or something he would be happy with, some kind of compromise. And I couldn't come up with anything, so I reluctantly called him with that in mind, and Abe did most of the talking. He's very chatty. And the more he talked, he seemed kind of level-headed, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It seemed confrontational or a little bit bold for me to say, hey, let's stop being friends, and unnecessary at the same time. So what I did instead is I just made a promise to myself that I wouldn't make any effort to contact him at all as long as Travis and I were together. And this was in Oklahoma City. I want to be specific because we've mentioned a couple different conferences. What year was that?
That was March 2007, Oklahoma City.
And just so we're clear, you went to Oklahoma City with Mr. Alexander in March of 2007 and March of 2008, is that correct?
Yes, both.
Okay. And when you went in March of 2008, this was subsequent to a history trip, correct? Or did you just go to?
Yeah, it was all the same trip, but we hit all the church history sites first, then went to convention.
Okay. Did Mr. Alexander, well, let's talk about this. Did Mr. Alexander ever encourage you to end friendships with women?
Yes.
Could you describe that for us?
Yes, he didn't like my friend Rachel. One of the only close friends I had in the church. I met her in Palm Desert. She went to the same branch. The branch is the same thing as a ward. They just call it a branch when it's a smaller number of members in the group. So it was a branch in Palm Desert. She was part of that, and our friendship blossomed. And
Is this the same Rachel you lived with when you moved to Mesa?
yes, that's the one I moved in with.
And to your understanding, why did Mr. Alexander want you to end your relationship, your friendship with Rachel?
He became hostile not toward her because he didn't interact with her a lot, but anytime she came up in our conversations, after I had a conversation with him, which came after she and I had the conversation that we need to go to our bishops.
Yourself and Rachel had a conversation about going to the bishop. Could you, what does that mean, or could you just explain that to us?
Yes, my understanding is when you're a member of the church, most things, if we're all sinners, is the idea, and nobody's perfect. So you repent, and a lot of times that stays between you and God and within your heart, and you go through your own repentance process until you feel like you have repented sufficiently. But when there are certain sins that are more egregious, it is recommended that you go to your bishop so that he can counsel you and guide you toward back to the straight and narrow, in other words. And so sexual sin is definitely on that list.
So your conversation with Rachel then related to sexual sin?
Yes.
Okay. And was this the same conversation you referred to a while back about where you told her you were having oral sex with Travis?
Yes.
Okay. And did Travis want you to go to the bishop with this information?
No.
And would I be correct in assuming then that Travis wanted you to end your friendship with Rachel because she encouraged you to go to the bishop?
He was just hostile about her afterward. I don't really know the reason.
Okay. Aside from Rachel, did he want you to end your friendship with anyone else? Any other females, excuse me?
Nobody comes to mind. I want to say yes, but I can't think of anybody.
Okay. Getting back to the text messages, you mentioned that on May 26th, he called you a whore. Moving back in time, were there other text messages where he called you names?
When I was looking through these just now, it seemed like they were more like complaints or accusations of things that I did wrong.
So are there
No, that wasn't my question. Apart from calling you names, if I heard you correctly, you said there was accusations in these text messages? Is that what you said?
Accusations and complaints about just things that he felt I did wrong or things that didn't please him.
Okay. Let's start with accusations, and then we'll work our way back to the things you did wrong. And if they're one and the same, so be it. What were the accusations he made against you in text messages? And if you need a minute to look, please do.
Okay. There was a bunch in here. I don't know how many examples you want because it's full of them.
Okay. Judge, you want to take a break before we begin?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be back 3:20. We will start promptly at that time. Please remember the admonition, you are excused.
Please stand.